Hey there, Phoenixes. I am actually recording this in the middle of the week instead of on the weekend. Um, I had mentioned that I will be sharing these podcasts as I feel guided, as the energy comes to me, and I've had it on my heart to share some insights that I had received, but I was still gaining a lot of clarity on those over this last weekend, and I wasn't ready to share them quite yet. But I want to share them now, and I want to get into a little bit of a discussion about them. So, this podcast is really going to be following my journey and my expanded understandings and depth of understandings as I go along in my journey. And my journey is one that I'm consistently diving deeper, always deeper into myself, always deeper into all of these different areas of me and the relationship that I have with myself, the energies that express within me, my soul's full expression, always feeling deeper into that and working to more fully express that. And there are a lot of ways that I go about doing this. I've gone into some of these in some of my previous podcasts. I do womb awakening ceremonies. I do guided meditations. I connect with nature. I, in my meditations, there are many tools that I use in my meditations to connect that energy. I use Reiki. I meet with others and have them share their gifts with me. I do energy psychology. There are just so many ecstatic dance, yoga. I do tribal yoga, which really helps to open and release, especially those first three chakras, and really gets you into your body. There are so many things that I do on a very regular basis to continue this journey of mine. And so I'm always getting deeper insights, but occasionally I will do something that is incredibly powerful, that just creates really deep and powerful shifts and embodiment within me. And one of those happened a couple weeks ago. I did a 5-hour womb awakening workshop with Jade Bertod. She is here in Dallas, and this is the second one that I've done with her leading it. And coming into this womb awakening session, in the months leading up to this, I have been recognizing my work in listening more empathetically, especially working one-on-one with others. I have such a passion to share and heal, but oftentimes that was being expressed in an imbalanced way. And so, I have this gift of being able to see the soul and the wounds that are shrouding its unique expression. And I realized that I was trying to recreate the healing journey that I have had, which is not what I'm here to do. And so I had actually, just a couple weeks prior to this 5-hour session, I had done a Kundalini workshop that was a 3-hour session. And I do Kundalini on a regular basis also, but this was a deep dive. And this was also centered around empathetic communication for me. And I realized during that session that I'm not here to recreate my healing journey for anyone because everyone's path is different. There were some skills that have been so valuable to me through energy psychology and things like that, that I was sort of trying to dive into learning through a mentorship, and it's just not been flowing. And I always just open to trust divine timing on these things. And it came to me that I'm not picking up on that as easily as I do some other things. And the flow of that mentorship is not happening because that's not my path. That's me trying to recreate my healing journey for others. That's not where my gifts are. And that's really not where my passion is, even though it's been so valuable to me. And I do incorporate some of these techniques and things that I've learned into my practice, of course. But that road doesn't call deeply to me. It doesn't call as powerfully to me as what I've just realized in doing this womb awakening ceremony 2 weekends ago. Not this last weekend, but the prior one. Today is October 9th, so it wasn't this last weekend, it was the previous one. And I realized in that workshop that I am a woman who comes from deep emotional wounds from my childhood, from verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing physical abuse, traumatized from the masculine. And, you know, I can say that I feel that I've been lucky or blessed along my path because I haven't had a lot of resistance toward moving through the healing in these areas. I had a lot of understanding that came quite readily around that helps me to move through it and to move through the emotional healing process of that quite easily. But there are layers of those wounds that we continue to, with all of these things, there are layers, and we continue to dive deeper and to gain deeper understandings in them. What the womb awakening ceremonies have done for me is introduce me to my feminine energy and really help me to gain a deeper understanding of that energy and of myself, and also of the masculine energy and the balanced expressions of these, the way that they interact with each other. And I'm so passionate about that, but I'm really deeply passionate and emotionally connected to the wounded feminine, and also the wounded masculine. I obviously am a little bit more drawn to and have a closer connection to the wounded feminine, but I can see so clearly that wounded masculine as well. And this is the realm, those first 3 chakras, and really, honestly, the first 5 chakras, because it really moves into us being able to speak our truths when we're wounded in these ways. But really just finding that power within ourselves, and those first 3 chakras, our self-expression, that guardian, protector, peaceful warrior for men, that wild woman, goddess, priestess energy for women, that abundance and flow and just all of these things that are rooted in those lower chakras where our power really comes from. So I've recognized that I really want to focus in that area, and I'm planning on, I'm setting the intention to work with a mentor. I'm reaching out to Jade Bertot actually to do mentorship to be a womb priestess. And this is not only for women, it's also for men. They have a Hara point. And so this is actually a space that's held for men and women for really that second chakra healing that's so powerfully affects both the first, second, or all three of the first, second, and third chakras. And I wanted to share some insights that have come to me since I went through that ceremony. And the very first thing that I'll just mention is that that ceremony really created an incredibly powerful shift for me, embodying that feminine energy of holding that nourishing space, that non-judgmental, nourishing, unconditional love space, that tender space for others. It just literally blew me wide open, and there were no words. I was just that vessel. And I could really see the beauty, the value, the necessity of having that when working with others, of course, especially one-on-one. When I'm working in a group, I'm able to hold that space for the group. But when working one-on-one, I would tend to be out of balance in my sharing and my guidance without really being empathetic to the feelings of others sometimes. I was afraid, honestly. I was afraid of feeling those intense emotions and identifying with them, because I can identify so deeply with them. And I was afraid of losing myself down that hole again. But recognizing that I'm in a space that's healed now, and that I can empathize while offering that ladder gently to help that person to move through these things from a space of understanding. That is pretty much what I got out of that. It's hard to put words to some of these things, but the other thing that has become very, very, very clear to me is a whole nother layer of the way that this masculine and feminine energy work together. So the energy of the new moon from that womb awakening ceremony was really grounded in relationships. There was a lot to do with relationships. A lot of the women around me, a lot of the people around me experienced triggering around relationships, trauma coming up around relationships, whether that is a parent relationship, an intimate relationship, child relationship. A lot of mother wounds came out during that time. And I wanted to just touch on some of these wounds that we have, that we end up with, and just the ways that the masculine and feminine can work together through these things. So the feminine energy is where I'll go ahead and start, because that's, I've had the most direct personal embodiment of these wounds. So there are really three places that the feminine energy gets wounds from, and actually the masculine will get wounds from these same places. It's just that they're embodied in a slightly different way, and they come in a slightly different way. So for women, we will receive wounds from the mother and the father. The mother wound comes in the form often of being overbearing and judgmental of our actions, critical of our actions, and not feeling that unconditional love. And honestly, that can come from the father as well. Those same sorts of things can come from the father as well, of course. But for women, We have so many life cycles that are really huge for us in embodying our feminine energy. And those are the trauma that's received at each one of these levels is held in our yoni, in our sexual organs, in the walls and muscles in that chakra, physically and energetically. And that it causes us to shut down sexually, intimately, and it causes us to be triggered intimately. And one layer of that is when we are first coming into our sexuality just as a child in a completely innocent way. And men do the same thing, although I don't think it's quite looked at the same way, is when we first realize the pleasure that we give ourselves simply by touching our genitals. And it's completely innocent, but a lot of shame can be layered upon us around that, both men and women. The second kind of major area where women receive a lot of shame around their womanhood is when we come of age and begin our menses. How that is viewed. Is it completely ignored? Is it shamed? Or is it celebrated? If it's being ignored, or if it's begrudgingly recognized, or if it has been shamed, that creates wounds around the embodiment of the feminine energy. And then also after that, in our teen years, coming into our womanhood and our sexuality, and kind of breaking free from that role of the child, of the little girl within the family, and trying to find our way through all of these feelings, emotions, changes. How is that viewed? How is that received? How is that held? What kind of experiences do we have around sex when we start exploring? And so many of the wounds that came before that really lay the groundwork for how we end up experiencing that portion of our lives. And throughout all of this, we have this masculine energy where we can get a father wound as well, where we end up getting wounded by the masculine energy in our lives, generally our father, and then as we're getting older, and usually it's a father figure. It may not be our father, but a father figure. And then as we get older, intimate partners. It can be the masculine energy of being overbearing and kind of putting the women into a role of lesser, putting the feminine into a role of lesser, or sexualizing that energy for their own purpose. Or it can be just a complete lack of showing up, just not being there, not recognizing the feminine energy, not serving it or honoring it in any way. And so because of this, the feminine energy can end up having these feelings of resentment towards the collapsed masculine energy of just not showing up, not honoring, not being there, not reciprocating, not holding space, not even attempting. Or it can have this feeling of not being protected because of being in this relationship or in this interaction where it was overbearing and repressive, or where it was over sexualized and just basically thrown out there to the world, not protected, not honored. And I definitely had more of the latter. And then, going back to some of the other wounds of the feminine we've got with other women around us. We've got the wound of our sisters, of other women who just tear each other down out of lack of self-esteem, out of a feeling of scarcity. There's not enough beauty to go around. There's not enough, of being smart, of being playful, there's just not enough. If you shine your light too brightly in any of these areas, you're somehow taking away from someone else. And so we're taught to dim ourselves, to protect others. And then there's also this, going back to the mother wound, there's that kind of overbearing where we view this mother as somebody that's above us, that they view us as them having more experience, knowing more. And so they try to, in an overbearing way, control the things that we're doing because they know better, rather than it being a pure relationship and recognizing that they're different paths. It's a guidance system. This person may have guidance to offer. Yes, we all have guidance to offer. I am much younger than a lot of the people that I work with, but I have guidance to offer them. So there's really this peer relationship that should be existing there. But there's this wound that comes from the overbearing mother who's trying to control the guidance, who's the kind of know-it-all, knows better sort of thing. And then we move into the masculine, and they have these wounds from the masculine and sometimes also the feminine of repressing the emotions. They're not allowed to feel or express these emotions. That's not okay. You need to be strong. You need to be stoic. And then there's this idea that they need to be aggressive, that it's manly to be brutish. And if you're not, if you're more sensitive, then you're labeled as a softie, as too feminine, not a true man. So there's also this wound that the masculine receives from the feminine, sometimes from the mother, but particularly as they get older from other intimate contacts where the masculine is manipulated by that feminine energy, by the imbalanced feminine energy. One of the imbalances that I went into in my masculine feminine energy balance was that feminine energy of manipulation, and the masculine has been wounded by this, and they have a lot of mistrust in the feminine because of this. But here's the thing, guys, we have mistrust in the opposite sex because of the wounds that we've received growing up, because of these views that we have, because of the experiences that we've had. And it doesn't allow that energy to flow. And it's come to me so clearly recently. And I didn't realize as I was moving through, I had very imbalanced masculine energy growing up. And I didn't realize it then, but I was speaking to a woman this weekend, and she had a man who I could see was very masculine. He was very guarded, and he was very wounded, and he was very triggered even by us two women talking together, because he had a lot of mistrust for the feminine. But she was also very imbalanced in her masculine, and they butted heads all the time, and they kept breaking up and kind of getting back together. And she didn't want to release her power. She didn't want to give her power away to him. And I recognized that we live, men and women, we are living in this fear of the other taking control. And there's that whole thing, like that whole game thing of like, oh, like keeping the control, like the who has the chase and who contacts who. And, everyone's so afraid of losing this control because they have these wounds from the opposite energy, from the opposite dominant energy. And so the way through this is to obviously explore those wounds within ourselves. And for women to recognize the power that the feminine has. Because, ladies, it's more powerful than the masculine. That's why it's able to manipulate the masculine. We don't even realize, and I had heard it so many times before, but we don't realize the power that we have. And I certainly didn't. I actually never knew how to manipulate using that feminine energy or sexuality. It always seemed to backfire on me, which I guess because I wasn't doing it right. I don't know. But I never liked to play those games either. But I was still seeking that power, that I didn't want to feel helpless. I didn't want to feel weak. And we have this idea that the feminine is weak and powerless, and it's not. Oh, it's not. So I went a little bit into in one of my previous podcasts about how the masculine energy feeds into the feminine, and then the feminine feeds back into the masculine, and how the masculine can hold space for the feminine. And so I've gained some deeper understanding into all of this over the past couple of weeks. And the feminine energy, when it's in its balanced expression and when it's in its full expression, is so incredibly multifaceted and powerful and mystical, and it's incredibly beautiful and incredibly powerful. The feminine energy, when it's in its balanced expression, is at once loving unconditionally and tender with arms wide open, and at the same time fierce and honoring herself and her loved ones and what's right. And it's incredibly sensual and pure and playful, and all of these things are intoxicating to the masculine energy. And I didn't realize it before. I have been in a relationship where, as I was embodying some of these things, and I didn't have a clear picture of any of it yet, I had this relationship with this man who had beautiful masculine energy. And he had told me he was so afraid of letting go because he felt that he would just do anything I said, that he could easily be manipulated. And I was just like, I don't know how to manipulate people. And I would never do that. I would never want you to do something unless it was your choice and your heart. He was so incredibly fearful, though, of this, that he had seen manipulation and grasped onto it in some of the ways that I was expressing and sharing things. And there was some unintentional manipulation, honestly, because I had a fear of him leaving. And so that I've gone into how that colors your words and stuff, but that was not the level of manipulation that he was feeling like he was perceiving. I think he had, because there's this fear of the masculine. They are drawn so powerfully to that natural feminine purity and power, and they can be manipulated by it. And so often that ends up being what happens with the feminine energy because it's imbalanced. And they can get deeply wounded by that. So of course they're scared. And so it's this kind of like push and pull of that energy from the man, from the masculine. But here's the thing, the feminine energy, and I don't fully understand this part of it. I have a sort of wide view, not really able to put into words, understanding of this, but this is something I'll be diving into deeper, and I'll be sharing more with you guys. And when I do my mentorship, I'll be gaining much deeper understanding and embodiment of this. But the feminine energy actually initiates the masculine energy into its masculine full expression. The masculine cannot fully express itself unless it has the feminine to hold that container for, and unless it's able to penetrate the feminine. So the masculine energy is in its full expression there to hold this guardian protector space for the feminine to fully express itself and bloom and blossom into, so that the masculine can penetrate. And that is the masculine's ultimate desire, is the penetrative desire. And that's oftentimes what we end up getting as women, is that imbalanced masculine desire of penetration, both in the physical and emotional realms. And without that ability to hold that guardian protector space to allow us to bloom, we end up getting this kind of forced penetration because they want to control that. Because if they're doing this whole surrendering, holding that space, opening and surrendering to that feminine, then that feminine takes their energy and actually guides it all the way up through her chakras, all the way through, and guides them into this connection to the divine, to themselves, to this ultimate connection to the universe, to their power, to all of these things. But it requires a full submission and trust in order to do that. And so we end up getting just this base level, intimate connection of penetration. And it doesn't go further than that. It is masculine-led, need-based, release-based, and it's not necessarily honoring the feminine in any way. It's literally just the masculine's needs and desires. And the feminine actually, especially as the feminine recognizes, as she starts to grow and heal these things, but especially if she's traumatized, we feel that and we reject that. And whether or not we honor in our bodies that we're rejecting that, it's not pleasant. It's not something that it's not well received. It's not welcomed. It's not this open blossom that is receiving you. It's receiving the masculine. And with these layers of trauma from the masculine existing in that feminine, it's not received well when it's forced. It's if you can think about it sort of like a flower that you're trying to force open. You can't force a flower to bloom before it's ready. If you do, you're harming the flower. This is exactly the same with the feminine energy. But, we've been harming each other so much because we're all working out of these imbalanced energies and this mistrust. But if we can find that partner that we can trust enough to move through this with, the masculine that can hold that space for us to blossom into, so that they can fully penetrate and they have enough trust to allow us to create that initiation, so that they are feeling the full energy of that masculine flow through the feminine, then it becomes this divine connection, the way that the masculine and feminine are meant to connect. the ways that we were made to connect. And I've recognized that, all of this is kind of at that energetic and emotional level, but I've recognized very clearly recently that in relationships and the day-to-day work and interactions that we have in relationships, I've been looking a lot at what relationships for a while, actually, for like maybe a year and a half or so. I've been looking at what exactly are relationships between a man and a woman, or between, what exactly are intimate relationships, even if it's not between a man and a woman, but just between masculine and feminine dominant. What is that relationship, and what are these intimate relationships meant to be? And it started out with just this idea that, okay, well, we're here to heal. Everyone is here to be a reflection of us. They reflect our wounds. They trigger our wounds. We're here to help each other heal. But it's so much deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. My current understanding is that the most healthy relationship that you can have, you're never going to have someone that doesn't have wounds. It doesn't matter how enlightened they are, how long they've been on this path, what's been going on. There are always wounds. There are always things that we're working from. There's always another layer deeper to go in that spiral. There's always more understanding. What you can get is somebody who is at the same level as you, or who is at a complementary level to you in your emotional maturity and in your understanding of these things and in your abilities to hold space. So when we go into a relationship, the biggest and most important thing I believe that we should be looking for is the ability for that person to hold space for our wounds without being triggered and blaming them on us, right? And it's, we get triggered when things happen. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to, that's what we're here for, really, right? Like, these relationships, especially these most intimate ones, they're going to trigger us. But what ability does that person have to recognize that this is a trigger, which means it's theirs? If you are triggered by something, it's yours. It doesn't matter what the other person is doing. It's yours. There's something for you to work through on that. You can honor yourself and take space. And it may be that you need to be honoring yourself by this. Maybe this person is actually toxic and you need to, depending on what level you're at, you need to be able to move on and honor yourself and your value in that way. But most often, once you get to a level where you are having conscious relationships with people who are evolved enough to hold some space for you and hold some space for themselves, and so that you're able to hold space for them, and you're in this kind of conscious relationship, you are diving into your wounds. When you get triggered, you dive into your wounds. You don't point the finger at the other person. You don't blame the other person, because ultimately your feelings are telling you that you have a wound there that needs to be addressed. There is a gift for you there. There is growth for you there. And our job with our partner is not to point the fingers at the work that they need to do, even though it may be obvious to us from the outside the work that they need to do. Our job for our partner is to non-judgmentally and unconditionally hold space for their wounds and accept them and love them through their wounds, and continue to reflect to them the best of what we are experiencing in them. This doesn't mean that we, especially women, will do this. And I don't know, maybe men do this as well, but I know that women haven't, because I used to do this, that we will fall in love with potential. We'll see all of the things that this person could be if they would only, right? That's not what I'm saying. You don't want to do that, because then you're trying to change someone. What I'm saying is reflect to them the best that they've shown you and continue to focus on the best that they show you, the best that you actually see from them through action. As long as you continue to reflect that absolute best, they are going to grow. And this goes for men and women. This is a human thing. We will continue to grow with that support. And this has been a huge realization for me, because I used to always come from the space of criticism, from the space of here's the growth that you need to do. Here's the work that you need to do, because I can see those wounds. I mean, I think a lot of us can. But that's not helpful. That's harmful. And it doesn't facilitate growth in any way. Even for children, I'm seeing this in my children from the ways that they're learning in school. To come at somebody from a space of what they don't know and pointing out what they don't know does not help them grow. It doesn't create a desire to grow. It creates a feeling of unworthiness. You don't want that in your partner. You don't want them to feel like they're not doing anything right. And that's exactly what ends up happening in these relationships when we do this. So always reflecting to your partner the absolute best of what they show you. Holding space unconditionally for their wounds with unconditional love and tenderness. And when you're triggered, looking at yourself and diving into your own wounds and holding space for yourself, taking that time and space when you need to. This goes for men and women. So I think that's kind of the gist of most of what I wanted to share for this podcast. I'm just giving myself a moment here to see if anything else comes up. Yeah, no, I think that's just about the gist of the ways that these energies can be wounded by one another, and the ways that we can show up for one another in a relationship. And, the last thing that I'll share is I don't know if there are also these facets for men. All I know is that in my womb awakening ceremony, I learned about these facets that women have, that they work through in their embodiment of the feminine. One of those is that of the queen, and that is the abundant, fertile energy. And that can be imbalanced. And actually, I'm going to pause here, or actually I have a couple of notes here on it, because this was really eye-opening to me. And I think it may be helpful for you guys also. So the queen is abundance, fertility, birthing, and full access to the feminine power and pleasure, and living your life in service to others through your divine purpose. This is the divine mother, caretaker of all creation. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's the second one. So that's living your life in your divine purpose. And then there's the queen, the mother, and the lover. The mother is the divine mother of all creation. And the mother obviously can come into this as, it's not just the mother, like as in having children, it's the mother of your birthing of business ideas, it's the mother energy of managing people, of managing projects, of anything that you manage, anything that you are, any ideas that you're birthing, any creation that you're birthing, anything that you're managing, it's that kind of guidance and holding space for those things. And the lover energy is the full expression of working with a partner. And I have, so far in my energy, I have really worked pretty well through the Queen and Mother energies. And I had recognized that there were some things that I had been working on shifting, that I was working on embodying, that really needed to be reflected to me from a partner. That really, that one, that interaction of actually dealing with the masculine dominant energy would help me to hone and more fully embody and explore. But also just, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess really just being able to work with that masculine energy, but also, oh, the other thing is also really having that space, that container from the masculine to fully open and blossom into powerfully. And being a lover, having that connection to that masculine dominant energy for the feminine is part of the sacred path of the feminine and that feminine full expression of empowerment. And we are able to feel that fully when we feel held and protected by the masculine. This says, when felt deeply safe and deeply loved. So there are some shadow expressions of each one of these energies, which I'm sure most women and probably men will recognize. The shadow of the Queen would be the cold, dark ice, the Ice Queen, flaunting their beauty as manipulation. The shadow of the Mother, the imbalanced expressions of the Mother would be the sacrifice of self in service to others, which we see so often in mothers. And we see so often in service to others in so many ways, in service to business, in service to so many things. And then the shadow of the feminine, love, is that manipulative energy, I think. No, I don't know. That says that that's the Queen. I didn't really make notes on that. But like I said, I'm going to be diving deeper into all of these ideas as I go down this journey. I just really wanted to share some of what I had gleaned with you guys, and just I'd been feeling really called to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of the relationship of the masculine and the feminine, and the wounds that are created and the ways that we're able to work through those and hold space for each other through those things. So I'm really seeing that my path in working with others is going to be helping people to peel these layers back, which I'm already doing in many ways, but really embodying and finding that power for the masculine to hold that space, that peaceful warrior power, and for women to be able to really work through these wounds and to embody all of these facets of the feminine energy, and to work with couples in how this works together. And so that's kind of where I see my path leading. And I'm so excited to explore all of this and to continue to share my insights. And I am so deeply appreciative for just having this space to be able to share these things, and for anyone whose, life this touches, who this resonates with. And I just can't wait for the deeper, richer expression of all of these things that I feel coming and being able to work with others. I also have, I don't know, for any of you that are in the Dallas area, I have a couple of workshops coming up in November. And one of them is a 3-hour intensive at Sun Yoga Center. This will be on November 23rd. This is going to be at 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. And we are going to do a deep dive into each one of the chakras and do some powerful healing and clearing of each one of the chakras. And we're going to be using movement and breath work and sound and guided meditation to work through each one of these chakras. And so if you're able to make it to that, it would be amazing. It's up in Richardson off of Coit and Beltline. That workshop is going to be $35. And at the end of it, we will have some snacks. And I have an event posted on Facebook about this as well. So yes, if you are interested in that. I am also going to be doing a 7-week series, 1 hour long each, at Tribal Yoga, where we're just, each class, we're going to be diving into one chakra individually. And those classes are going to be $12 each. And that's at I'm not sure what the dates are yet, actually. We have not settled on the dates. I was gonna say what time we had scheduled before, but we're still actually kind of feeling into where we're putting that in the schedule there. So I will definitely send you guys an update. Keep an eye on my Instagram. I'll definitely have it posted there. And the Instagram also, by the way, is Phoenix_rising_2019. And the podcast can, of course, also be found under Release Your Phoenix on Spotify. You can also find the video recording of these podcasts all on my YouTube link, which is also Release Your Phoenix on YouTube. And I have a link to that YouTube channel on my Instagram so that it can be found easily. You can also follow me on Facebook under Release Your Phoenix. No, I'm sorry. Facebook is Phoenix Rising. So thank you guys again for listening. If any of you were able to attend that workshop at Sun Yoga, I would love to see you. And I so deeply appreciate you. And again, just the ability to share my insights and my journey with you all. Much love, and I will see you next time.